50 years ago, Frank Young gazed up at the starry sky over the newly opened Miller Outdoor Theater and dreamed of bringing musical theater to the masses. Who would have imagined this young man from Pasadena, whose family ran the neighborhood junkyard, would create one of the most powerful and influential organizations in the history of musical theater, Houston's Theater Under the Stars.
Theater Under the Stars, 50 seasons to celebrate. Sponsored by Theater Under the Stars.
Houston, 1968. Glimmering skyscrapers with glass skins were reshaping our skyline. Construction for the Galleria and Intercontinental Airport was underway, and the new Miller Outdoor Theater had just opened to the public. International companies considering establishing Houston headquarters questioned city leaders about the quality of our cultural life. With an established symphony, ballet, and opera, the only thing missing was Broadway-style musical theater productions. Mayor Louis Welch knew just who to call. Frank Young was a larger-than-life, multi-talented visionary with a passion for theater.
Frank, of course, was not a triple threat or a quadruple threat. He was a quintuple threat.
He could write, produce, direct, choreograph, even conduct an orchestra.
Frank at that time was a staff member at Houston Grand Opera in the production department. But on the side, Frank produced musicals. When Mayor Welch came to him and said, "What about doing a show at Miller Outdoor Theater?" Well, Frank thought that would be a pretty good idea. So he scraped together the big sum of $4,400. He got a lot of people to volunteer their services and their time.
Frank Young scheduled a single-night performance of Bells Are Ringing on September 14th, 50 years ago. But as we all know in Houston, expect the unexpected. Heavy rains forced the show to be canceled. But the skies cleared the following day, and on September 15th, 1968, Bells Are Ringing played to a packed house.
They had a success beyond their wildest imaginings. Theater critics praised the show. Audiences raved about it.
Theater Under the Stars, a nonprofit Houston musical theater company, was born. Frank's vision provided Houston the razzle-dazzle of Broadway musicals with a bit of homegrown touch.
It's important that we give our locals work. We need to give them the experience of actually being in a big Broadway musical, and big time like the size of our productions.
Not an easy task, considering 1968 was a time most people believed great American musical theater productions could only originate in New York City and only feature famous actors. A belief Frank Young and Theater Under the Stars quickly changed.
The 1972 production of South Pacific is what really put TUTS on the map. It was an elaborate production. It had some of the best Houston talent in it you can imagine doing the principal roles. But what everybody remembers is that half of the orchestra pit was turned into a lagoon with an 18-foot waterfall.
Who would think of doing something like that? Nobody but Frank Young.
The first of many of Frank's out-of-the-box ideas.
Frank was a man of a million ideas, and they would just constantly come at you. And
Gone with the Wind, complete with horses coming over the hill.
They built a bridge across part of the seating area, and we drove horse-drawn carriages onto the stage, and they shot fireworks off the top of Miller Theater when we burned Atlanta on stage.
Frank pushed that envelope to make sure that people came, that they enjoyed what they saw, and that they wanted to come back, and that people would talk about it.
Sometimes it worked like gangbusters, and sometimes it didn't. It didn't faze him. He was like, okay, whatever, on to the next thing. And it was about getting the show on.
There were times, in the early days where Frank was doing all of it. He'd direct it, he'd work with the costumers, work with the choreographer, he would conduct the orchestra, and wearing all of those hats and never taking a dime, not getting paid to do it. His heart was what pushed him forward.
But that you are my servant.
Oh, no!
Name your favorite musical. It's probably been on a Theater Under the Stars stage.
Down.
Not only the classics like Les Miserables or Chorus Line, but also musicals based on real-life Houstonians. Ninfa celebrated restaurateur Ninfa Lorenzo's remarkable journey.
Marvin Zindler.
And our Channel 13 consumer reporter, the late Marvin Zindler, inspired Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
When we did it, Marvin called and said, Frank, I'm coming to the opening night. You will introduce me from the stage. So I do that, and he stands up and waves, and 3,000 people in the old music hall booed him until he sat back down because he closed our whorehouse. Marvin's going to always have the last word. So now we get to the curtain calls. And all the stars are taking the bows, and Miss Mona gets the last one, and people are standing up and cheering. And out on the stage runs Marvin Zindler with twirling two batons and throwing them up into the rafters and catching them. Who knew he was a Texas champion twirler? Well, so the whole audience again then went really berserk. So that's my whorehouse story.
There's a ghost in the opera.
Under Frank's leadership, TUTS pioneered numerous brand new musical productions, including Phantom and Annie Warbucks. The world was taking notice, including our parent company, Disney.
Michael Eisner called. He said, I'm wanting to produce a musical, Beauty and the Beast. And he said, I want to rehearse it here in Los Angeles at the studio, and then I want to open it at the Pantages and run it. And they said, are you crazy? Disney has never produced a musical, and you want to open it in Hollywood? You don't have a clue what you're doing. There's this man in Texas whose name is Frank, and you should call him because he knows what he's doing. So that's why I got a call from Michael Eisner.
Beauty and the Beast was not only a phenomenal Houston and Broadway success, but remains the 6th longest running musical in history. Other successful TUTS collaborations, including Jekyll and Hyde with the Alley Theater and Carousel with Britain's Royal National Theater.
The candles at the court.
The Best Little Musical Theater Company in Texas wasn't so little anymore. Not only did major production companies want to work with TUTS, so did big-name entertainers. Robert Goulet, Debbie Reynolds, Tony Randall, Leslie Uggams, Anthony Newley, Kathy Rigby, Gladys Knight, Eartha Kitt, a galaxy of glimmering stars graced Theater Under the Stars, both the famous and soon-to-be famous.
TUTS really was the first organization that gave local musical theater performers and dancers an opportunity to put their true talents to work on that stage.
Every show that we are doing has 50% Broadway actors, 50% professional community actors. It helps us financially, but the most important thing is it develops an artistic community within Houston.
TUTS' secret to developing exceptional hometown talent when we come back.
Zoe's been coming to the river for over 10 years. This is the first place that she came to that she didn't cry when her parents left. Teddy, yeah, we've seen him come out of his shell more. He gets really nervous and will be quiet. Even last Friday was a big win for him.
By the way, baby.
Because he said his lines on the microphone.
These are just a few of the children from The River, one of many Theater Under the Stars community outreach programs.
The River's mission is to provide an accessible, affordable fine arts education for individuals with disabilities.
Theater Under the Stars is not just a top-notch, world-class musical theater organization, but since day one, its core mission is to make musical theater accessible and inclusive to all of Houston, especially children.
It was a passion of mine when I started this company. I'm born and raised in Pasadena. My family would drive me to Houston to take dance, and my parents ran a junkyard for a living, and yet they wanted me exposed to all of these things. So when I started Theater Under the Stars, I said, I want to do for those kids growing up now that would have the experience I had. And of course, it also charges up kids that come to see the show and say, oh, if they can sing and dance, I can do that.
TUTS' most recognizable outreach program is the annual Tommy Tune Awards.
This is the time. This is the place.
45 Houston area schools participate in this Tony Awards-like production, honoring excellence in high school musicals, as well as awarding a number of college scholarships.
Before Frank Young started TUTS and started opening up opportunities for gifted kids and opportunities for people that would never have the chance otherwise. When I left this town, I had to leave this town. It was not possible to make a living as an artist, as a singer, as a dancer, as an actor in this place.
Frank Young, Theater Under the Stars, that you came up with this idea, that you see it through every year, that it is so incredible. I'm just gobsmacked by the whole thing.
In 1943, when this play premiered, we were halfway through a world war.
One of the newer ways of introducing the public to musicals is TUTS Spotlight Series. Hosted by TUTS creative team, these free, informal conversations explore the stories and themes behind TUTS productions, whether it's a brand new one or the remake of a classic.
Oh, what a beautiful morning!
Why is this piece of musical theater, this piece that we all know and love so well, why is it still relevant today? Why are we doing Oklahoma? And through sort of the sifting through and the research behind it and the frame that's put upon it by the creative team, it gives you a better view of, well, why should I come see Oklahoma?
Of stars and golden sheaves.
The little engine that could, driving TUTS community outreach train, is its Humphrey School of Musical Theater. For those pursuing a career in musical theater, professional training for students of all ages.
Anyone who has a passion or a love to do Broadway or musicals or even direct, produce, choreograph. The Humphrey School is a good training realm for that.
Humphrey staff work closely with nonprofits and socioeconomically diverse neighborhoods to challenge a new audience to discover the world using techniques from musical theater.
We are challenging people to step outside of their comfort zones and do something a little bit theatrical. And most of the times they're like, I feel silly. Well, guess what? Discomfort is a sign of growth. And that's what we ask, is that, give it a try. See what you love.
No one understands the give it a try experience better than the students and parents of The River, the program that embraces children with disabilities.
As a parent, we always strive and look for things to build our children up and give them confidence, but also keep them safe. This is where angels walk among us. They come and bring these kids joy and laughter and companionship.
Zoe White was born with a rare metabolic disorder.
On the third day of life, she went into cardiac arrest and basically died at our house. I was lucky enough to give her CPR, get her back, but she crashed again and spent about a month on life support.
Zoe survived but suffered severe brain damage.
She was given a very challenging prognosis that she would probably never walk, never eat, never learn, potentially be bound to a wheelchair for the rest of her life.
Are you looking at the water?
Peace. Peace.
Jeez.
We took it upon ourselves that we were never going to stop pushing her.
11 years ago, when she turned 4, the Whites enrolled Zoe at The River.
She had separation anxiety. One of us had to be there at all times, otherwise she would literally melt down and uncontrollably. Within a day, literally her first session here, the next day that we dropped her off, she was fine and she really started to blossom and come out of her shell, if you will.
The one I love, deep in the heart of Texas.
I love to sing, I love to act, I love to dance, and I like to make art.
What does the river mean to you?
It brings me happiness in my heart. Like, it just blows me away. Like, for my parents to see all my shows and all that, it just brings me happiness in my heart.
Many of these kids have been here a number of years. Many of them are nonverbal. Many of them are absolutely terrified around crowds. They don't want to be touched. And within no time, they're up here reading lines, singing, interacting, hugging. It's absolutely amazing to watch them bloom and have that confidence in themselves.
Oh, brother, who wrote this script?
What does it do for you when you see her on stage, excelling the way she has?
The amount of joy that brings to a father's heart, especially with his daughter, is indescribable. I can't even put it into words. We all want so much for our children, and happiness, I think, tops that list. To see her up here performing and enjoying what she loves and her passion, it's tenfold for me as a dad.
Oh, that's so sweet. I started coming here when I was 5. Well, I was born with spina bifida. I couldn't walk. I didn't have braces, so I had to crawl. The first time my mom got me my first braces, I was like really excited and happy.
A lot of the programs, they have to go on field trips and the kids move at a fast pace. So I had to find a place where they understood differences, and inclusion is a very important piece. And so when I heard about the river, I said, this is a place for Brennan.
A lot of people just taught me how to sing, how to dance, improv, ad-lib. It just inspired me.
Oh, Brennan, he has the indescribable it factor.
It's so cold and so broken, hallelujah.
He's got a wonderful voice. His whole face lights up when he sings. This past year, he performed in Sleeping Beauty in her Winter Night. He'll be performing in the finale number at Oklahoma, but it's been wonderful to see him develop his confidence.
Yeah! You are on the main stage. That is incredible. How do you feel about that?
I felt really good.
He is an inspiration. He is a light, because when he walks into a room, he shines. People see it. Everybody sees it. He's my Brennan.
Will you please sing something for me?
Sure. Don't you know, baby, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there.
This is a place where abilities are, no matter who you are accepted, you are a part of a family, a part of a mission, a part of a goal to help all children.
And I'll be there.
Oh my God, you have to give me a hug. Theater Under the Stars' 50-year success secret?
Always be arriving. If you get there, you're done. But if you're always arriving, you're pushing beyond.
TUTS Artistic Director Dan Connectis and Executive Director Hillary Hart are masters at pushing beyond, evaluating every production through a new lens, making what may seem old, new and relevant again.
The importance of producing classic musicals like Guys and Dolls is to recognize and reflect the relevance that they have, not only in the time that they were written, but also to illustrate the resonance they have to us today. In this spirit, you're going to recognize a Latin flair to this production and rediscover once again these endearing saints and sinners.
How can she make any money from that? Maybe she owns a piece of the mission.
There is kind of a thing about, revivals and classic musical. It's like, oh, well, it had its time and its place. Well, it has a time and place now, too. But it's who gets to tell those stories now.
And what stories TUTS will tell this 50th anniversary season.
Every single show has something special attached to it.
Beginning with Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is the second musical I ever saw in my life. The first one was The King and I. I was 8 years old, and I thought nothing could beat The King and I. And then I saw Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year.
Oklahoma is the first collaboration between TUTS and the Houston Ballet since TUTS' first show at Miller Outdoor Theater 50 years ago.
I think the idea of having ballet with the choreography of Oklahoma is really exciting.
I think it is more relevant now than ever about people going to a land and experiencing hardship and working the land to make it their home. And even though they're talking about Oklahoma, I think they're talking about any place we call home.
Once again, featuring homegrown talent.
The ballet has 10 of their students, 21 of their dancers, 20 of our actor-singers. We have 9 of our HSMT kids, 1 of our river kids.
Yeah, is that Brennan?
Yeah.
Amazing.
The Wiz is the next show, and again, it's about home, which links up to what we are talking about with our mission, which is community.
For the holidays?
We originated Beauty and the Beast 25 years ago, so I wanted something that was for the whole family.
Speaking of family,
I don't think you can have a celebratory season without Mamma Mia. Ragtime is celebrating its 20th anniversary. It's dealing with immigrants. It's dealing with racism. It's dealing with a country that is being challenged from within and from without. Sounds modern to me. We were deciding what classic Broadway musical could we do to end the season with a bang, and we couldn't decide, so we decided to do them all.
Do them all through Jerome Robbins' Broadway, a montage of the legendary Broadway director-choreographer's award-winning productions.
In that show is King and I, On the Town, West Side Story, Fiddler on the Roof, Peter Pan, and there are selections from each of those shows. There are very few theaters in the world that has the resources to do this show.
TUTS is self-producing all 6 50th anniversary shows. TUTS hires everyone from cast to supporting crew members and oversees everything from orchestration, choreography, lighting, music, and sound direction, set construction, hair, makeup, and costume design, and then some. Staff work round the clock to build shows that not only make Houston proud, but offer all of us a very unique communal experience we will carry with us long beyond the curtain call.
When I was about 11 or 12 years old, my mother took me to New York for the very first time.
Hillary's mom saved enough to buy 2 Starlight Express tickets.
You know, it's on roller skates, and there was this man sitting next to me. I didn't know him. Something happened on stage. I don't remember exactly what it was, but this man and I went and started to grab for each other. And we had kind of like this nervous giggle. In that moment, I became aware that it wasn't just about the masterful storytelling on stage. For those 2.5 hours, we were a family. We were having this shared experience together. And I have never experienced anything that does that the way musical theater does.
Sponsored by Theater Under the Stars.
I imagine opening night and tears coming down my face when it goes Oklahoma where the wind comes. I'm gonna cry. I know I'm going to cry.
Oklahoma where the wind comes sweeping down the plain.
Now celebrating its 50th anniversary, Theater Under the Stars is Houston's home for musical theater. Whether under the stars here at Miller Outdoor Theater or under the stars here at the magnificent Hobby Center.
What do you think TUTS means to Houston?
I think we mean home. My hope for this organization is that we will become a second home to people so that they will come, so that they will feel safe here as they experience things that will make them laugh, things that will make them cry, things that may make them angry, things that may just make them stop and say, oh, I'd never really thought about it like that before. Or things that don't make you think at all. Sometimes you just need an escape.
I'd like to say a word for the cowboy.
It's an opportunity to create that experience for people to build community not only within themselves, with their families, with their friends, and then with total strangers.
Welcome to Theater Under the Stars.
Notably missing from Theater Under the Stars anniversary celebration, the man who 50 years ago gazed up at the starry night and dreamed of bringing musical theater to the masses. Frank Young died last September.
I think Frank would be pleasantly surprised. I think he'd be proud of where his organization is today and seeing its growth, and it lived through its challenges, particularly because the first performance was a rainout, a washout, that it survived beyond that, and that people came to see it and they wanted to see more. We'll make sure that everybody gets to go on for another 50 years. And hey, the show goes on, and every time it does, somebody up there is looking down and smiling.